Ladies, gents, thank you very much for coming here at short notice. We did hope that we could maybe give you a little bit more warning, but in these negotiations, finalisation really literally did go to the last minute, so we'll actually get hold of you as soon as we possibly could. If I could commence by reading out what is an agreed press release between the club and Sports Direct, and then I'll take any questions you have on that. Okay, so the Rangers Football Club and Sports Direct are pleased to announce that they've terminated all prior agreements between them and entered into a new commercial arrangement on terms substantially different from the terminated agreements. As part of the new arrangements, the Rangers Retail Limited joint venture between the club and Sports Direct has ended, and going forward, the Rangers Football Club will deal directly with Sports Direct. The negotiations between the parties have been protracted and have not been smooth. In that regard, the Football Club and Sports Direct thank Puma for its assistance and patience during a period that has been difficult for them as official kit supplier to the club. The Football Club has also expressed its thanks to Sports Direct for its willingness to restructure the arrangements between the parties. The Football Club recognises that Sports Direct entered into legal agreements with a prior board at a time in the club's history when the future was very uncertain. Sports Direct's willingness to restructure the relationship reflects confidence in the way the club is now being managed. For obvious reasons, it is not the practice for the details of commercial arrangements to be made public. However, in view of the publicity surrounding the previous agreements and the resultant boycott by supporters of kit purchases, we consider it appropriate to give supporters some insight into the new arrangements. The new arrangements represent a fresh start for the Rangers Megastore, the relaunch of the Rangers web store, and the sale of Rangers kit and products throughout SD's stores. The financial arrangements between the parties are transformed. The Football Club will now receive by far the majority of net profits from the retail operations at the Megastore and web store, together with an equal share of all net profits from sales through Sports Direct. The Football Club will also obtain a priority dividend on the winding up of Rangers Retail Limited. The new deal will deliver real value for the club and Sports Direct. Supporters now have certainty that any money they spend on Rangers products will be hugely beneficial for the club. Sports Direct will benefit from the increased sales and from the opportunity of demonstrating the part that its retail skills can play in building and commercialising the Rangers brand, which was always Sports Direct's intention. Both parties are delighted to achieve a successful resolution to the issues that have previously marred the relationship between them and bring an end to the protracted and costly litigation. The Football Club and Sports Direct hope that the new arrangements will be long-standing, but there is no longer a fixed commitment on that front. We will rely on our combined commercial performance and drive to cement the relationship going forward. Rangers has traditionally been one of the best performing brands in British football, and the club believes the new arrangements can restore it to that position, providing funds to invest in the team and the facilities at Ibrox and Auchenhowie. Thank you. I will now take any questions.
Dave, what's changed then? Why you said things have been protracted. Why was there a willingness on Sports Direct's side to finally deal with you and get this over the line?
It's difficult for me to answer where Sports Direct's willingness came from, but my interpretation of it would be that it is clear from what's already known with the litigation that at the time that after the new regime where we criticised and eventually, in fact, terminated the arrangements, there was some very, very, if I say kindly, robust legal interchanges between ourselves and Sports Direct. And you remember there were times when all the directors were being sued in their personal capacity. You remember there was an attempt to put me in jail for saying unkind things about the Sports Direct agreements. And I can only assume that with the resolve that the board has shown in not caving in to the pressure we were put under by Sports Direct, I think it got to a stage where Sports Direct thought it's probably in their interest as well to look at terminating or at least renegotiating the existing arrangements. And the only other alternative, quite frankly, given our clear position, was to continue to litigate. That was not good for the club. It was costing us legal fees. It was costing us access to the retail profits. Rangers has traditionally always been number one in Scotland. In fact, prior to the English Premier League, Rangers was the most profitable retail operation in the UK, including Manchester United. And even with the Premier League, we were still always in the top 5 or top 6. So we lost that revenue completely for the last number of years. And I think we just got to a point with Sports Direct and discussions with Mike Ashley and ultimately Sean Nevitt, where they said, okay, let's just see if in the interest of both parties we can find a way of working together. And that in fact started about 8-9 months ago. So even with the willingness in both parties to find another way forward, these negotiations were extremely, extremely difficult. There was a lot of agreements to be looked at. There was a lot of litigation to be looked at. So it's been a very, very, very challenging and hard task to get to this point.
How big a game changer is this?
Do you see that as the end of the dispute with Sports Direct and Mike Ashley?
It is the end of the dispute with Sports Direct. In terms of this agreement, all litigation has been terminated. So all of the litigation before the courts on both sides has been terminated, with each party paying their own costs. So essentially we walk away from the litigation with a complete new arrangement, which now I think I've said in a number of occasions that I look forward to the day when I could stand up and say to the Rangers supporters, we now have arrangements in place, now go and buy your kit, it is in the interest of the club. And finally today I am in a position to say that.
What does it mean for the future of Rangers now in terms of what its impacts on the football team?
I think you know, Paul Murray sent me an email this morning when it looked like we were going to get this deal across the line. Because even this morning when I flew in overnight, we still hadn't quite got there. And you know, Paul just said quite simply that this is monumental, and in terms of the effort that's gone into getting this deal done as well, and it's the single most important thing that's happened to the club since regime change, and I think it is that significant for the club.
Can I ask, when does the deal start? How long is it for? And what impact, if any, it has on, I gather there was a 7-year notice period for you to withdraw. And also I noticed there's a line at the end of your press releases which says there is no longer a fixed commitment on the front in regard to the new arrangement being long-standing.
Okay. As far as the 7-year arrangement is concerned, that's terminated. So all prior agreements are terminated. So this is a new agreement. As you're aware, Rangers has not had any retail capability for about 10 years when David Murray sold the retail operations to, I think it was probably JD at the time. So in order for us to get back and get our retail operations up and running, it was always necessary that we had some kind of retail partner. What we've agreed with Sports Direct, and quite frankly, Sports Direct would never have entered into an agreement if we were asking them just to walk away completely. What we have said to them is that we will work with them to the end of next season. To the end of next season. You know, we have an arrangement with Puma that runs to the end of next season, and we thought it made sense to work with Sports Direct to the end of next season. So this agreement goes to the end of next season only, and then we have the opportunity to renegotiate with Sports Direct or anyone else.
And the notice period,
the notice period is gone. That was part of the old arrangement, so we're out of that completely now.
And can you say how much in the pound, if I can put it like that, the deal is more beneficial to you?
It's going to depend, I guess, on the sale of strips. But if you take the, I can't go into the numbers specifically because I'm precluded in terms of the contracts. But what I can say is that, you know, previously the figure of Rangers getting 7p in the pound was fairly accurate. Now, by far the largest part of the profits is now coming to the club. I mean, Sports Direct are providing a service. They've got bricks and mortar. They've got costs. They're carrying the stock, so they're being compensated for that. But in terms of the profit, most of the profit is going to come to the club, so substantially so.
And you can't say it? You can't put a figure on it?
I can't. I mean, I've got an internal figure in my mind as to how well I think we'll do this season. And I think we all understand as well there's a strong pent-up demand by supporters to buy kit. So I think we're going to have a particularly exciting couple of months ahead of us. But there's a number of things we've still got to work on. We've got to work with Puma. For example, because this deal was only completed today, we had to submit our kit to the Europa League as to the kit that we're going to play next season, and we've had to submit last season's kit for that. So Stuart and Andrew will now engage with Puma and see what we can do about getting a kit launch and what we're able to do between now and the beginning of the Premier League.
Does this suggest a thawing between Mike Ashley and yourself and the club, and is there a potential to work going forward, not just with regards to kit but potentially investment, given he still has a shareholding?
I think it indicates a thawing in the sense that if one had gone back a year, I think that the approach of Sports Direct was still, we're going to enforce the agreements that we've got whether you like them or not. Their view was they were entered into legally with the board at that time, and they wanted to enforce them. So the fact that they have been willing to enter into good faith negotiations, albeit difficult negotiations, would certainly be a level of thawing. I think I can say fairly certainly that will not result consequentially in an increased investment by Mike Ashley in the club.
Stuart, from your point of view, in terms of dealing day to day now with this settled, how beneficial will that help you, Pedro, and of course you have a new director of football as well? What will this do?
I think it clearly will generate additional revenue for the club, and that allows us to look at strengthening the squad further. We've made good strides in terms of that. The director of football announcement yesterday, I think, will allow us to look at the long-term future of the club. I think this also allows us to look at the sustainability of the football club going forward. And it's from short term, there's obviously benefits, but I think long term, that's where we'll see the real benefits of this deal being done.
Dave didn't want to monetise in terms of exactly how much, but in terms of maybe putting it into how many extra players this could get Rangers with a deal like this if it goes well, what could that do for Pedro's budget?
I don't think you can put it into extra players because, as you know, players come in all shapes and sizes and costs, so I don't think you can do that, but it certainly gives us more certainty, and it helps underpin the financial position of the club and gives us a great springboard to take things forward.
There's been quite a heavy investment in the squad recently over the summer. So
Yes.
Can you say how you've been able to fund that in the interim?
Yeah, I mean the investment in the squad has still been funded by internal resources. There have been additional funds put in by myself and some of the other investors as part of the ongoing commitment. I think we have said repeatedly that we were going to try and advance the club over a period of years and step up the investment each year, hopefully be back in Europe, and I think that's what we've done. But the investment that we've made so far has not anticipated any revenue at all from retail operations. It has not anticipated any revenue from retail operations. So the investment we've made in the squad at this point in time has assumed that a deal will not be done. Hence, taking Stuart's point, it obviously gives us more flexibility going forward. And if you look at the extent to which Rangers has been hamstrung, I mean, Rangers has always been by far the dominant retail operation, certainly in Scotland. And each season for decades after decade, we went into the season with an advantage over Celtic because we had a retail profit that they had to bridge up and catch up in other ways. Therefore, it was very, very important for us as a club to try and normalise the retail operations as soon as possible. So that is very, very significant that we've not only got access now to what's likely to be a very profitable revenue stream, but we're also going to stop hemorrhaging the legal costs because we've not only been not getting money from the retail operations, we've been spending money in legal fees. So there's a double benefit to the club from that perspective.
Dave, you mentioned that you flew in overnight. You weren't sure if the deal had all been signed off. When was it actually signed, sealed, and delivered?
I think around about 3:06 this afternoon, about 3 o'clock today, in terms of actually the lawyers exchanging agreements and all us having agreed that everyone is signed properly. There was a lot of agreements, there was a lot of litigation, there was a lot to unwind. I think given the historic relationship and difficulties the parties have had, I think the lawyers really went above and beyond what was required to make sure everything was dealt with meticulously to be absolutely 100%. And I had the pre-agreed press release. The question was whether I could do it today or tomorrow, or whether I had to fly home on Friday, not having done it. So I'm delighted to be able to be sitting up here today.
The club's obviously had its turmoil over the last 6 years. Did you hope that with this agreement now, all that can be put to bed and the club can get back to a sort of more normalised footing in terms of how it operates?
Yeah, I mean, I think the club is with this deal behind us, the club is normalised in the commercial sense. What might not be clear from this agreement is that the previous board transferred all of Rangers' IP, intellectual property, trademarks, etc., to Rangers Retail Limited. Now, that had a number of disadvantages, not only the terms associated with the agreement, but the fact that any decision Rangers wanted to make on new ideas had to go through the Rangers Retail Board, which was controlled by Sports Direct. Because all these arrangements are terminated, as we're sitting here today, all of that has been transferred back to the football club. So the football club now owns all of its IP. So, everything that's been built up over the last almost 150 years is now back in the club's hands. So not only can we now take a lot of energy that's gone into fighting the Sports Direct fight and into damage control, we can now take that same energy in terms of driving the club forward. And as far as our position relative to Celtic, which is something we always watch very, very closely, it's just very, very significant that under our control, because it's an advantage that Celtic had over us that we consider to be an unnatural advantage.
You mentioned there about,
Ask a couple of questions, please.
you mentioned there about the kit in which they will be registered with UEFA for the Europa League games. Does that mean that the kit is going to be the same kit as last season that you'll use through the entire this season, or do you imagine you can get something else done in time for the start of the new season?
No, Andy, it's going to be the same kit, because these things have quite long lead times to actually get them into the market. So, on the basis that, from a supporters' perspective, there's not a lot of them have bought it. So actually, there's a retail opportunity there for Team and Sports Direct and the club.
Dave, just given everything that's happened over the last few years, fans perhaps still viewing Sports Direct with a bit of suspicion. What would you say to the fans in light of the new agreement?
I would say to fans, it's not really about Sports Direct. It's really now about supporting the club. And I think, I repeat what I said earlier, I've been asked this question a number of times. Am I in a position to say to the fans, start buying the kit because it now supports the football club? And I've been unable to do that. This is the first time I can do it. And yes, Sports Direct is a retailer, but we needed someone with bricks and mortar stores, and it is Sports Direct, and it had to be Sports Direct because they weren't going to enter into new arrangements and cancel the old ones if we went somewhere else. But what I can say to the supporters, which is the most important thing, is the benefit of purchasing that kit is going to come back to the club, and it's going to go back into the squad.
You said that you were funding some of the transfers and some of the business yourself, I think, if I read the notes rightly, and also internal resources, did you say?
No, what we've agreed, and it has been the situation up to now, is if the club has required funds that was coming from shareholders by way of interest-free loans. So we've continued, yes, on the same basis we've done previously. So recently, in fact, within the last couple of days, further funds have been transferred into the club from myself and the Three Bears and others who've committed to funding the club. And at the time that we were looking at the decision to step up the quality of the squad as we're looking to an early access into Europe, and looking at perhaps giving a more honest challenge to Celtic next year than we did last year. Obviously, we're all very disappointed about the performance last year. It was necessary for me to go to these investors and say, once again, you've got to pony up here. We need to do this. We've committed to doing that, but the funds have got to come from us.
And that's a loan.
It's interest-free loan on the same basis as had been made previously.
Dave, can you give any update on the situation with Mark Warburton that was suggested that he was going to be taking action against the club after his dismissal?
No, there'll be no action taken there. We've heard nothing further, and I think as indicated at the time, we didn't expect to. That was an action that they would never be successful with.